Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into history to uncover the legend of a king whose very name still echoes with bravery. Richard I, better known as Richard the Lionheart. Get ready for a tale of valor, adventure, and a crown that led armies. Our story begins way back in the 12th century. Imagine a world of knights in shining armor, grand castles, and epic quests. That's the stage for young Richard. Born into the powerful Plantagenet dynasty, he was the son of King Henry II of England and the formidable Eleanor of Aquitaine. Talk about a power couple. From a young age, Richard showed he wasn't your typical royal. While his brothers might have been content with court life, Richard had a fire in his belly, a passion for chivalry, and a natural gift for military leadership. He was tall, strong, and incredibly charismatic, making him a natural leader even before he wore a crown. Growing up, Richard was surrounded by political intrigue and family squabbles. It was almost like a medieval soap opera. He spent much of his youth in his mother's Duchy of Aquitaine, where he developed a deep love for troubadour culture, poetry, and, crucially, warfare. He wasn't just a fighter, he was also a patron of the arts, showcasing a surprising depth to his character. But don't let that fool you. When it came to battle, Richard was absolutely fearless. He honed his skills in various skirmishes and rebellions, often against his own father and brothers. Talk about complicated family dynamics. These early experiences forged him into the formidable warrior he would become. Now, let's talk about that famous nickname, Lionheart. It wasn't just a catchy title, it was earned. Richard's courage in battle was so legendary that people began to compare him to a lion, noble, fierce, and utterly dominant. Imagine seeing a king on the battlefield, charging fearlessly, leading from the front, inspiring every single soldier around him. That was Richard. His reputation for bravery spread far and wide, making him both admired by his allies and feared by his enemies. It was a name that perfectly captured his indomitable spirit and his unwavering resolve in the face of danger. But Richard's life wasn't just about ruling England. In fact, he spent surprisingly little time in his actual kingdom. His true calling, in his eyes, was the Crusades. The Crusades were a series of long, arduous military expeditions undertaken by European Christians to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. For Richard, this wasn't just a political or military endeavor. It was a deeply spiritual quest. He saw himself as a champion of Christendom, destined to lead his forces to Jerusalem. When news reached Europe that Jerusalem had fallen to the great Muslim leader Saladin, the call for a third crusade went out, and Richard was among the first and most eager to answer. So, in 1189, after years of preparation and securing his succession, Richard finally became King of England. But instead of settling into royal life in London, his sights were firmly set on the East. He immediately began raising funds and organizing one of the largest and most well-equipped armies of the era. He even sold off royal lands and offices, a controversial move, but one that showed his absolute dedication to the cause. He wasn't just sending others to fight. He was going himself, fully prepared to face the dangers head-on. The journey to the Holy Land was an epic in itself. Richard didn't just sail directly, he took a circuitous route, stopping along the way to assert his authority and even conquer Cyprus, which became a vital supply base for the Crusaders. His fleet was immense, a testament to his logistical prowess and ambition. When he finally arrived in the Holy Land, his reputation preceded him. The existing Crusader forces were invigorated by his presence, and even Saladin, a brilliant military strategist in his own right, knew he was facing a truly formidable opponent. Richard's time in the Holy Land was marked by incredible military successes. One of his most famous victories was the Siege of Acre. This was a brutal, prolonged siege that had already been going on for months before Richard arrived. With his strategic genius and engineering expertise, he brought new vigor to the attack. His siege engines were legendary, and he personally supervised many of the operations.
The fall of Acre in 1191 was a massive morale booster for the Crusaders and a significant blow to Saladin's forces. It showed everyone that the Lionheart had arrived, and he meant business. But the Battle of Arsef, later that same year, was perhaps Richard's most brilliant military triumph. After the fall of Acre, Richard began marching his army south along the coast, with Saladin's forces constantly harassing them. It was a tense, dangerous march, but Richard maintained strict discipline. When Saladin finally launched a full-scale assault near Arsef, Richard's tactical genius shone through. He allowed Saladin's troops to exhaust themselves against his disciplined formations before launching a devastating counterattack. The Crusader victory was decisive, demonstrating Richard's ability to control a battle and turn the tide against a numerically superior foe. It cemented his reputation as one of the greatest military commanders of his age. Legends from the Crusades paint a vivid picture of Richard in battle. Imagine this: a king not hidden safely behind his troops, but right in the thick of it. It's said he wore a golden crown or a distinctive crest on his helmet so his soldiers could always see him. A beacon of courage and leadership amidst the chaos. He rode his horse into the fray, his sword flashing, inspiring his men to unimaginable feats. His presence alone was enough to turn the tide in many skirmishes. He wasn't just a general. He was a warrior king, a true knight in shining armor, and his men absolutely adored him for it. Richard and Saladin, though bitter enemies, developed a grudging respect for each other. There are numerous tales of their chivalrous exchanges. From Richard sending Saladin a gift of ice and fruit during an illness, to Saladin offering medical care to Richard's wounded knights. These stories highlight the code of chivalry that, even amidst brutal warfare, sometimes transcended the boundaries of conflict. They were two great leaders, each fighting for what they believed in, and they recognized the greatness in the other. Despite his military successes, Richard never managed to achieve his ultimate goal: the recapture of Jerusalem. He came close, even seeing the holy city from a distance, but recognized that his army was too depleted and his supply lines too stretched to hold it if he did take it. After much negotiation, Richard and Saladin signed the Treaty of Jaffa in 1192. This treaty allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem and granted control of a coastal strip to the Crusaders. It wasn't a total victory for Richard, but it was the best possible outcome, given the circumstances. It ensured Christian presence in the Holy Land and brought an end to the Third Crusade. With the treaty signed, Richard finally decided to return home. However, his journey back to England was fraught with peril. He couldn't sail directly through enemy waters, so he disguised himself and attempted to travel over land through Central Europe. This proved to be a disastrous decision. He was shipwrecked, and then, while traveling through Austria, he was captured by Duke Leopold V, an old enemy whom Richard had offended during the Crusades. Leopold then handed Richard over to Emperor Henry VI of the Holy Roman Empire, who held him for a massive ransom. The news of their king's capture sent shockwaves through England and Europe. Imagine the despair and the frantic efforts to secure his release. Eleanor of Aquitaine, Richard's formidable mother, worked tirelessly to raise the enormous ransom, a sum equivalent to hundreds of millions of dollars in today's money. Churches, monasteries, and even ordinary people contributed, showing just how much their Lionheart king meant to them. After more than a year in captivity, Richard was finally released in 1194, returning to an England that had desperately missed its absent king. Upon his return, Richard wasted no time reasserting his authority. He quickly put down a rebellion orchestrated by his younger brother, John, who had been scheming to seize the throne in his absence. Richard, ever pragmatic, eventually forgave John, though he made it clear who was in charge. He then spent the remaining years of his life mostly fighting in France, defending his ancestral lands against the growing power of the French king, Philip II Augustus, his former Crusader ally who had often been his rival. It was during one of these campaigns, while besieging a minor castle in France,
that Richard was struck by a crossbow bolt. The wound became infected, and tragically, he died in April 1199 at the age of 41. Richard the Lionheart's legacy is immense and enduring. Although he spent only about 6 months of his 10-year reign actually in England, his image as a heroic, chivalrous warrior king became deeply ingrained in English folklore and identity. He was remembered as a symbol of honor, strength, and unwavering courage. He was the epitome of the knightly ideal, a king who led from the front, whose very presence could inspire an army. His stories, his battles, and his larger-than-life personality have been retold for centuries, shaping our understanding of the medieval period. What can we learn from Richard the Lionheart today? His story reminds us that courage isn't just about physical bravery. It's also about conviction, leadership, and the ability to inspire others even in the direst circumstances. He faced incredible challenges, both on the battlefield and in captivity, yet he never truly wavered in his spirit. He showed that true leadership isn't just about wielding power, but about earning respect and loyalty through your actions. So, the next time you hear the name Richard the Lionheart, remember not just the warrior, but the king who, despite his flaws and his long absences, became a timeless hero. His tale continues to inspire, proving that courage, indeed, can echo through the centuries. What do you think of Richard the Lionheart? Let me know in the comments below. Did you know he spent so little time in England? I'm always fascinated by your thoughts. If you enjoyed this journey into history, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe for more epic historical tales, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.